Uh, the biggest thing is the rear tire selection. Stock, these bikes come with a 110, 90, 19. Although me included, a lot of people, me included, are running the 120, 80, 19 on the rear. I'll put a link down in the description of the video where my brother did a video discussing these tires, the difference between the 120, 80, 19 and the 110, 90, 19. The 120, 80 is slightly shorter of a tire, and the 110, 90 is slightly taller of a tire, and that does affect your pitch. So my brother discusses it real well in his video. You'll often hear people say that they think the 110, 90 corners better, and they say it's felt like it stayed in the ruts better, this, that, and the other thing. And he discusses how he honestly believes it's really because it just changed the pitch and put more weight on the front and steepened the front head angle. By raising the rear end, you steepen the front head angle, and you also put more weight on the front wheel. So he believes that that's what they're really feeling. But you have to consider that when you're dialing this bike in, and I'm going to be considering that as we discuss this. So like I said, I'm running the 120/80, and I'm currently running 7mm fork height right here. I'll show you how I check the fork height and how I adjust it real quick. You can just use a tape measure or whatever, but I actually like to use a digital micrometer or whatever they call these things, and just you want to measure from let me get something to point at here. You want to measure from the top of the fork tube, not the cap, but just the tube, this part right here. This is the tube, right? So you want to measure from the top of the tube right here to the top of the triple clamp. It's best to measure more on this side than it is on this side, because where the bolts are right here, you can see they split the triple clamps up in here, and sometimes the level changes a little bit right where it goes, where the split, where the pinch sometimes one side can be a little higher than the other. So it's best to take your measurement from the back side here, where we know that this is going to be it's going to be a good place to measure, and it's going to be equal on both sides. So I like to take my mic, get my measurement right there, and as you can see, I'm right at 7mm with this 120/80 rear tire. That's where I prefer to run them at currently. I found with the YZ250 two-stroke on this, with this back tire, it seems to, for me, the range seems to be anywhere from 8mm to 7mm, but everyone's a little different. Maybe you like 6mm. As you raise your front end, 6mm will mean a taller front end. 5mm will be even a little bit taller, because remember, we're measuring from here, so the less, if it's 5mm, it's going to be raised on the front end. I found anywhere from 7 to 8 works good on this bike with the 120/80 rear tire. However, with the 110/90, you're going to probably want to run it anywhere between 6 to 7. Again, just like the rear sag, you want to play with it. You want to go out and figure it out for yourself. Don't just take my numbers and run with them. Try it out for yourself, play with it yourself, because you might actually prefer something a little different. But if you're completely clueless, you can go ahead and start with my numbers, and on my last video for the series, I will actually give you my exact suspension settings. So if you just want to duplicate it, if you don't want to waste time, and then you can, I still suggest playing with it, figuring out, because every rider is a little bit different. So what I look for when adjusting the fork height, obviously when you're adjusting the fork height, you're changing the pitch of the bike. So as you lower the front end, by raising the forks and the clamps, you lower the front end. As you do that, it starts to steepen the head angle of the bike. So as the front end goes down, as the front end goes down, the head angle will steepen, and as the front end comes up, the head angle will rake out, and that affects the way it corners. So the steeper the head angle, the sharper it is on corners. It kind of drops in easier, and it follows through better. However, if you get the the head angle too steep, if you drop the front end too much by raising the forks too much, on the exit of the corner, you'll notice when you start getting on the gas, the bike just wants to keep, and it'll just, you know, it'll just keep turning for it instead of straightening up and coming out of the corner the direction you want. So you want to fine tune it for that. You want to pay attention to how it feels in the corners, and you want to set it where it goes in with good accuracy and kind of where you want it to go. But on the way out, it comes out right on your timing and pointed the way you want it to point. So if it seems like it wants to turn sharper, especially on the exit, if it just wants to keep cornering, you probably have your front end too low. So you probably want to lift your front end up by using less, less fork height up here. And that'll raise the front end. But if you find that, man, you're just struggling to get this thing in the corner, you're having to stick your foot way out there and just work it hard, drag a front brake around the corner, whatever it takes, and you're going to want to lower the front end and to help the bike carve through the corner better. And it's really easy to make these changes on the track. And I got to be honest with you, even a 0.5 millimeter, I can feel that, and I bet you can too. I've heard people before, you know, I say, yeah, I changed my forks 1 millimeter. Man, what a difference. They're like, what? 1 millimeter? You can feel that? Yeah, you can. Try it for yourself. I'm telling you, you can feel it. So here, you want to make these changes at the track so you get back-to-back comparisons. And what you do is just put the bike on the stand. You loosen up these 10 millimeters right here and this right here. You do that on the other side too. Now, if you're looking to lower the forks and the triple clamps, technically raising your front end, what I like to do is I just get a flat head that has a plastic, plastic flat head, and I'll set it right up here I'll set it up in here, pressing down on the fork. Oh boy, here we go. Yeah, I'll press down the fork. I'll take a hammer and I'll just tap that side while the triple clamp bolts are loose. Doesn't take much, and because it's plastic, it won't scratch. I mean, it won't dent or damage your nice, pretty fork. So I set it right on top of the fork here, and I just give it some lub taps with these loose, and it'll go down. I do that equal, and I'll tighten. If I'm only going 1 millimeter, I'll do this one first. Obviously measure it, and then until you get it to the measurement you want, and then tighten it down, and then go to the other side and do the same. Now, if you're going more than 1 millimeter, let's say you're doing a 5 millimeter change, a big change, you're going to want to do like a millimeter here, millimeter there, a millimeter here, kind of walk it up. But just 1 millimeter, you just do this side and do that side, lock it in, and go out and ride and see what you think. And if you want to bring them up, you want to bring the forks up to lower the rear end. You can. This is how I do it. You just take a extension and you set it right on the end of the seal here. Let me get a light so you can see better. Just right about there. You don't want to put it right here and damage your seal. You want to put it right here, and then you just tap on it with a hammer. Of course, with the triple clamp bolts loose, you can tap on it, and it'll just slide up. And again, same thing, 1 millimeter on this side, 1 millimeter on that side. If you have to go more than 1 millimeter, let's say you're doing 5 millimeters, then you just go boom, boom, boom. You go back and forth till you rise it to what you need. You got to kind of stagger it up. But usually, I'm only making no more than 1 millimeter change at a time. And you definitely want to do back-to-back comparisons on the same day. There are some people, my brother's one of them, that will make a suspension setting at home and during the week and then go to the track and test it out. I don't like to do that. I like to do it at the track so I get it back-to-back, so it's really in my face whether or not I'm riding better with that setting or am I not riding better with that setting. And another thing to consider as you're making these changes is the pressure in the forks. The forks, as they get hot, heat makes air expand, and as the air expands, the forks will start to feel firmer because these are sealed units. So as they compress, they are squeezing air in there. There is oil in there, and that we'll get to that, the oil height adjustment, in one of the future videos. But just for now, as they compress, they have to squeeze air in there. What I personally, I just use these quick adjusts right here. At any moment, let's see if I got any air on this here. Nope. But I can just bring these right to atmosphere pressure, and you're going to always want them close to atmosphere pressure. If you don't bleed the air out of your forks, what happens is they have a tendency to pump up, and when they pump up, your front end will always be riding high then, and you'll be tuning around a pumped up front end. And then the next time you go to the track and the bike's cold, it might just feel totally different. So it's good just to consistently bleed your forks. I like to bleed them first thing in the morning, and then throughout the day I'll bleed it, especially after the first ride, once they warm up. And throughout the day I'll just bleed it. But I have these quick these quick bleeders, so all I have to do is just hit a button and it bleeds it out. Stock, it's just a flathead screw. Even if it's that, just take your time and put it on. You want to bleed it preferably on the stand, although I mean I actually bleed it. I'll tell you how I do it. I bleed it with the wheels on the ground, no one on the bike, just on its own weight, because I know when I go out on the track within one lap, it's going to heat up and it's going to expand. And so I found that if I bleed it with the wheels on the ground, with no weight on the bike, no one on the bike, just the wheels on the ground and the bike on its own weight, I find that if I do a couple laps and come back in, I can hit the bleeder with the bike on the stand and no air comes in or out, which means it actually just met atmosphere pressure. Yes, I started a little bit negative by bleeding it while I was on the ground. I go out the track with a little bit of negative pressure, but as soon as it warms up, it falls right in the atmosphere pressure, and I don't like going above. I would rather be below atmosphere pressure than I would above atmosphere pressure. That's just me. As soon as it goes above atmosphere pressure, as soon as these things pump up, so to say, it just completely just messes up the handling of the bike for me. So I don't mind it being below below atmosphere pressure. The bike might corner a little bit sharper, the front end will stay a little bit lower, but that really doesn't bother me. But once it starts going above atmosphere pressure, it starts like jumping out of lines on me and starts jumping front and high, and it just doesn't feel right. Now, one thing I highly suggest or highly disagree with is setting a bike's height, the whole general height of the bike, so the rider can touch the ground good. These bikes are set up tall for a reason. These foot pegs are up tall for a reason. The seat's up tall for a reason. It's because once you get rolling, you want to stay out of the dirt, you want to stay out of the ground. You don't need your feet getting caught up in ruts. You don't need your feet getting snagged on the faces of the jumps when the bike compresses. The bike's supposed to be tall. You don't see horseback riders choosing short horses just so they can put their feet on the ground. So if you can't quite touch the ground, if you're a shorter guy and you got to tippy toe it, that's fine. Just tippy toe it until you get the bike rolling, because once you get rolling, that's really what matters. So when you go to set your fork height and your rear sag height, don't go for a low setting just because you're a shorter guy, or don't go for a tall setting just because you're a taller guy. Go for what actually feels good. And because once you get rolling, your feet are off the ground. If you got to tippy toe it just to get put it in first gear and get it rolling, that's fine. Because once you get on the track, you want to be above all that mess. You don't want your feet getting snagged on stuff. You want to be above all the ruts and everything. Some of these ruts can be pretty deep in some of these tracks, and with ruts going up the faces of jumps and stuff, I have had my feet I've had my feet literally getting knocked off. And I don't run my bikes low, so be careful with that. Don't set your bike's ride height based on how tall or short you are. And keep in mind, you should be bottoming out your suspension at least once a lap. Otherwise, you're not even using your whole travel, so that's just a waste. These bikes have about 12 inches of travel, and you want to use it all so you get the most out of the bike lap after lap. So you should see these forks and getting close to the bottom right here. I think they bottom out right about there. You want to see that. You want to see, oftentimes you can see a little ring where the fork cleaned the dirt off up to a certain point. You want to see it down there, and you want to see that you've been getting a shock all the way to the bumper. You should be doing that once a lap. However, you shouldn't really know where it happens on the track. It should be transparent. So you should be able to come back in, tell that you've gotten to the bottom, but if someone asks you where exactly did you get to the bottom, you should be like, I don't know. I just know I did based on how it looks. And I forgot to mention this earlier. Another reason why the static sag, remember that's the sag when no one's on the bike, it's just on its own weight on its wheels, is important too. It's because the first little bit of travel should be so light. Let me show you here. The first little bit of travel, this bike's on the stand right now, should be so easy that, see, I can do it. It should be very easy to compress the first, I would say, 10 millimeters of the rear end. And if you take the forks off the bike and you compress each fork, you'll notice the first 10 millimeters, it's really easy. And there's a reason why it should be like that. When you're in the air and you come down, when the wheels initially make contact with the ground, they should make contact with a soft touch. If you have your back end where you have very little static sag, every time the wheel makes contact with the ground, first off, it's going to be a thuddy experience. You're going to feel it go. You're going to feel it thud, and it leads to a lack of traction. It's better when the wheels touch down. The initial touchdown is softer. That kind of gives them a chance to bite before all the weight of the bike comes down. And you know, the forks are automatically set like that from the factory. And when you buy fork springs, I mean, you can adjust your preload on the front fork and dial in less or more of that, but most springs come pretty close, and so that's good. But the rear end, that's why it's real important to have your static sag in the proper range, is so that you do have the proper amount of touchdown when it first touches down, that it's nice and soft initially, so that the wheels have a chance to bite and stuff, and that it's not a thuddy experience. Well, I think that's about it. Get out there and play with your suspension. And I mean, even by the time I get to the last video, if you know, and you have an idea about all this stuff, sorry about that, my wife interrupted me, but yeah, get out there and spend the day with your bike, like literally just one day, maybe even 2 days. Just focus on suspension only on the track. Don't worry so much about your speed or chasing other people around. Just keep making changes, dialing stuff in, and becoming familiar with your bike, because once you get a bike dialed in for you, I mean, it's amazing when a bike's really dialed in for you. You can't pay a suspension guy to do that. Yes, they will revalve your bike, and they'll give you what they consider their secret formula or whatever, but it's still not the same as when you actually know how to do it yourself, because, well, then you know what only you know what you feel out there on the track. They don't know. Like I was saying, even the sag, you know, you read MXA and they'll say run 105, you know, but and there's people that just put 105 and think they have it. But I have experience with helping people tune in their bikes, and we'll start making changes. They thought they just copied MXA settings or whatever, and they thought they had the magic, and then I have them do some rides, or I ride it myself, but we're close to the same weight, and we start working on it, and they're amazed at how much better they can get it. So only you can get your bike as good as you want it to be. You can't pay anyone else to do that for you. So you have to get out there and do it. In the next upcoming videos, we're going to start diving into the compression and rebound on the shock and the forks, as well as the fork oil height on the front end. So stay tuned. I don't know exactly what we're going to be doing in the next video. I have to give it a little bit of thought, but I'm trying to put this in an order to kind of put together, a sequence for you guys. But yeah, stay tuned. I really appreciate you guys watching. Go ahead and click like and subscribe, especially if you enjoy this kind of stuff. And again, if you have any ideas, anything you're struggling with on suspension or chassis setup, please leave it in the comment section, because this will help direct me on my next video, just like the spring rakes did. Someone commented in the comment section, and that really helped me out. So I was just going to completely overlook spring rates, and that would have been a mistake. I appreciate it, guys, and enjoy your evening, and I'll catch you next time.